Welcome back, Out of Body Explorers. Today we have an interview with Mary Beaver, having an out of body experience, meeting a young version of Jared Rand, who is involved in technology and very involved in the MedBeds. So we talk about that. We also bring in John Witberg to bring in some other information that he also talks about a certain MedBed. And he gives his opinion of what he thinks may happen or has happened, or maybe it's another timeline. You tell me what you think. Leave a comment below if you have any questions, and enjoy the show.
Hi, Mary. Just here to observe and listen.
Oh, of course. Thank you guys for coming in. Like I said, I'm super excited. I think there's a lot of answers in here. And again, like I said, I haven't even fully broke down the whole dream and stuff that he was talking about, or vision or jumping, whatever. I did write down what I believe my physical appearance was. And Rusty, you're definitely in this category because, you know, you're the timestamp jumper. So I'm not. I always kept myself close. That was interesting. I know we've done it in the SSP program, but we're a little safer. Weirdly enough, we were a lot safer in the program because we were a valuable asset at the time. So, okay, Rusty, I actually don't know how to mute everybody.
Well, it could say they can mute the whole group. I mean, I can individually mute right now, so which I'm probably going to do.
Okay. Okay, so it starts around, I would say, I think it was the 1st or 2nd of August. It was definitely right before or right after my daughter. No, I think I friend, a very sweet lady veteran, Marine veteran, called me, I believe actually on my daughter's birthday. So it was either on my daughter's birthday, the day before, or the day after. And she's very close with Jared Rand. They talked every day almost. And I have spoken to Jared Rand throughout the years about his stuff and my stuff and all that, you know. But the last couple of years, he obviously struggled with things, but I do believe there was handlers involved in that, and it seems to be with a lot of other people too. So one day I get this phone call from my friend. And she said she had bad news for me, and I thought something else, and then she said Jared Rand had passed away. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, when? And she said on the 28th of July. And he had given explicit instructions for his body not to be moved for like 3 days, which I get that because that's an esoteric thing. Usually your soul has 3 days to decide if it actually wants to come back into the body, but I don't encourage anybody to entertain that. Sometimes the soul might not want to leave. It just depends on the condition of the physical body. So he actually didn't get picked up by the coroner's office until I think she said on the 5th day. Now we had had a couple of conversations since this point, and she had mentioned, she's like, something doesn't feel right about it. She's like, Mary, I don't feel like he's gone. And I was like, well, he's probably not. His soul could be wandering around for those 3 days, you know. We have no idea. And I was like, well, I can guarantee you that the government's not going to let a valuable asset like that disappear. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, he's a valuable asset. His DNA has the celestial chambers. That's why he knows so much about them. He's a part of it, just like I'm a part of opening portal gates and, you know, activating walls when I, you know, walk up to them. The government uses us all very specifically. And she was like, so you think he's going to be okay? And I was like, well, at least his soul's free, right? So that's what I was thinking at first. And so we talked, and she felt better, but there were still a lot of unanswered questions for her, and we were trying to locate like his family to let them know, and because we weren't sure if the caretaker was letting anybody know. Yeah, we couldn't find anybody, but she did remember that he had a nurse. So I think the nurse kind of popped in one day because he was having some health things going on. Again, I think it had to do with handlers. But I would say about maybe 2-3 weeks ago from today, it was kind of in the evening, but not too far in the evening, like mid-evening. I was super tired, and I thought, oh, the heavens are going to give me another download. And I was like literally trying to fight it. I did not want to take this download. So, but I couldn't help it. I fell asleep, and it wasn't quite like I had since a Native American in my childhood taught me how to ascend out of my body. But I freaked out because I looked down and there was my body. So I thought I was dying. I did not know at the time that, you could travel. But I've heard all these, everybody talk about, the different types of traveling and out of your body experience and stuff like that. So I believe that my body was doing a bilocational experience or quantum leap experience, which also can come down to, what would you call that, Rusty? Out of body experience thing, either with your soul, spirit, whichever one that is. I don't usually leave my body alone. The monks and all these spiritual people will usually don't leave their bodies unless they have other people around them to keep shadow critters from getting in your body. So I was literally like almost pulled from my body. My body was still here in my house, and I felt protected, I guess. My daughter was next to me, and I have 4 dogs, and they're usually all under my feet. I believe what happened was, I think he was calling certain people to him, like in spiritual form, the ones that are still up here to give messages. I don't know for sure, but I got pulled to Africa, which, at first glance, I didn't realize I was in Africa, but then it was like, oh shit, we're in Africa. So when I got there, there are military people walking around, scientists, other types of people, and there was like this huge, massive arc, like tall and wide. I'm not going to say it was as wide as a football field, but maybe a little bit smaller, but it was very tall. And there's all these people around. It was like a camp, and it definitely had like restricted everything on it, kind of feel, but people could see me, right? So I was a little weirded out because, again, I've never jumped into these out of body experience things. And so for people to see me, I kind of like, I'm standing there like, if I stand here long enough, maybe they won't see me. But everybody kept staring at me and looking at me, just kept going. They weren't worried about it. Like, maybe this was something that happened all the time. I just, again, just standing there, taking it all in, somewhere in Africa. I do know the feeling. There were types of different animals that can identify as African animals. And then I heard this voice yelling at me, Mary. And I looked, and there's this young man over by this huge computer on the one side of the ark. And it's like it was built into the ark. And he's yelling at me to come, he's like, Mary, come here, come here. And I'm like, I was thinking, I don't even know who you are. I don't want to move because I didn't know I was not getting kidnapped. And I had no idea what was going to happen. So he just kept yelling at me to come there. And so I finally started walking. Again, nobody was presenting any threats like, Genie in the Lamp kind of thing, and steal your soul. So I got to the guy, and he's just talking, all excited, and he's typing stuff on this huge computer that's in front of him, very high tech, and almost kind of like military DOS database like language. And he's just talking, and I'm like, I'm sorry, do I know you? And he's like, yeah, you know me. Like, where the hell have you been? And he's like, I was like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Jared. And I'm like, well, I'm Jared. That guy's dead. And he was like, I'm Jared Rand. And I was like, no way. I was like, but you're dead. And he's like, technically I was, yes. And he's like, but I'm not anymore. And I was like, you're like 20. How could you be? Like, I was in a state of confusion at that point. I kind of felt like it was him, but there's this young kid in front of me. So, and he's talking like he knows he only has so much time before I get pulled back, right? Because my physical body is going to be like, hell no, you need to get back over here. And because it kind of was not a consensual snatch and grab, like there was no invitation. The heavens kind of do the same thing a lot of times, and you can put restrictions on people doing that because they did it once when I was in a car, and that's not a good idea. He knows that you're limited in time. So he was telling me, I was like, you're dead. I was like, so-and-so called me, and this happened. And he was like, right. He's like, well, the military came and got my body 5 days, and they've resurrected me into the underground, age regressed me. And he's like, Mary, I've been working on the celestial chambers. They're all done. And I was like, wait a minute, how did you get this all done? He's like, oh, I've been down there for months working on it. And I was like, how? You just died. I'm like, that's impossible. So he explained that in the underground base that the time is different, because I'm like, for months, you've been down there for months. You've only been dead like a few days, a week. And so he explained how the time is different down there, but he didn't say like what the time frame was. So I'm gonna guess if he said he's been down there for months and he got all of these, millions of celestial chambers up and running, but again, he's the key to those, just like other people are the key. Like, I'm a key to opening doors. Like, we're basically celestial gatekeepers. So I could put my hand on these massive ancient pillars and they start lighting up, right? And then as long as, depending on the pillar and the door itself, I could do it myself, or there has to be another being, like I've described in my past SSP experiences. So, excuse me. So Jared Rand was the key to these chambers. And I remember my friend that called me had asked me, she's like, well, he was just waiting for the funding. And I was like, well, hold on, let me check. I never checked the funding. Well, it just came out a few months ago up here. I think it was early when they were doing the budget, that all of the science and all the space stuff and all the exploration has been funded, like trillions of dollars. So he got the funding. So, but I don't think that they were going to give it to him up here, because the majority of the world is still trying to wake up. And if we started production above surface, and if they went below surface, and he's saying he's been down there for months and he's only been passed away for, less than a week and a half, then that to me would make more sense that they should take it all down there. And so it was all starting to kind of like tingle in my head, and like, okay, I think I'm getting it. And so he was talking about the chamber that he's using in front of me, and he still calls these all chambers, even though this one's not a chamber. It's an ark of some sort. And I remember him talking about the different types of arks that he was going to build, and that, that the rest of the world didn't know about. He didn't openly talk about some of these, and in private, like if you had a private one-on-one, he said he would talk to you, or like on some of his private calls and stuff. So I remember him talking about the one for the animals. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is the one for the animals. And I was like, why in Africa? And he said because Africa has more secluded land, and they don't have freedom to actually just go to restricted areas like we do. We try to sneak off into people's restricted areas, right? We challenge the system too much out here. So there's these restricted, protected lands in Africa, and he said that there's a bunch of them all over Africa. That one that we were at, I don't know the location, but they're all protected. And he said all the animals and the plants get to go first. And so the animals, it's tall enough for a giraffe to walk through, and wide enough for, a few elephants to go through at the same time. So all these animals just walk through it and they become healed. And so I asked him, well, what about the plants? You have to like drive them through? And he's like, no. And he started talking about this subtonic type of, and again, I don't have all the words because he was talking fast. He was very excited. He was like, this was my whole dream, my whole life, blah, 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 blah. And he said it was a subtonic frequency that goes under the ground and covers like hundreds of miles, and it heals the roots of plants and then all this other stuff. And I'm like, this is amazing, right? And then he had mentioned before on our calls when him and I have talked in person about having him for also ocean and marine life as well. So, but they wouldn't be like arcs, they would be circular. So, because obviously, fish have to float through. So it'd be like a ring. And they would just flow through it, big enough for a blue whale to go through. And all other life. And again, he said, I mean, he had a lot of devices. And anyway, so he said these ones are gonna be out here a few months. He said they're putting them up in all the other countries as well because the wildlife and the plant life has to go first. And I'm like, go where? And he was like, on the migration. And he was like, well, you know about it because you're working on it. I was like, oh, you mean back to the stars, the other planets? And I had mentioned the 4 planets and the 3 moons. And he said, yes. And he's like, after all, if not most of the animals had healed from, being toxicated from human poisonings or any kind of natural attacks, old age, stuff like that, he had to come back to all of the chambers or gates, and he had to change them, recalibrate them to become stargates, so that the animals and the trees and plants and stuff can be motorized or moved onto these other planets. So on this screen, he was showing me, like, again, he's typing like a million miles an hour, and he's just jumping from screen to screen to screen, and he's showing me how it works. He's showing me from other locations because they have hookups from other locations to each screen, like each location can see the other locations. And so he showed me where these earth movers had like tons of trees and bushes and just all sorts of greenery in these massive earth movers. We're not talking small ones, we're talking the big ones. And they were disappearing into these gates. He said there's only like 2 that were actively moving plant life. So I said, well, wait a minute, how is all that plant life going to thrive before the animals? And because the plants were going first, and then the animals would go. And he said each planet has its own separate gestational timeline. So they're doing it now. So the plants down here, a forest can be created in 40 years. Or a jungle, a forest, whatever you want to call it. It's been proven. So whatever scientific engineering calculation they have for each of these planets and moons, they have it structured down to a science on how long it will take for those planets to start having, all the spots like forests. And then so they've transplanted bugs, they've transplanted everything that creates an ecosystem. And the animals will go next after what he calls a few months. But again, he's up and down in linear time between the surface and up here. So it's different. I don't even know how the man's keeping up. But ET in this project, because he used the word ET and XT, and I'm like, I don't know what those were. So I Googled them. I looked it up. I couldn't find anything. I went into the space portal and I found that ET for Earth movement and interplanetary movement means Earth time. And XT means experiential dimensional time. So, because he kept saying those, and I thought he was talking about aliens at first. So, again, I had to go research a bunch of different areas to find this kind of verbiage. When I talk about it, and he said ET and XT, that's what I mean, the time of Earth and then the time exponentially under terrestrial dimensional time. So he's literally bouncing back and forth. So in their scientific calculations underground and between Earth, and I don't know how he explained it, I'm going to botch it 100%, but he said that the chambers and the frequency that's going under the soil is connected to the time under Earth when these present themselves. So it's like it slows time down, but then it speeds it up. There's a whole quantum thing around it. I'm not Jared Rand, so I don't know how to explain it. I'm just maybe somebody else kind of knows about this technology. It's very fascinating, but at the same time, I don't know how to explain it. But this is going on right now in Africa. Since then, there could be places in like Russia, because again, Russia is very protected. So nobody's going to be walking up to these chambers. If you do try to get there, I'm going to let you know they're very heavily guarded with military, and you'll probably be shot. So don't try to get to those chambers. Eventually we will get the chambers. So, and I think Australia was another place that was on the screens. These were destinations that these things are being put at. And so I saw like where active ones were, where ones are being built, and they literally had like all these different things, countries that were either getting ready to be turned on, but Jared Rand is literally in his moment. Everything he's talked about is happening, but he says it's underground for the migration back to the stars. So I was like, well, that's cool. I mentioned something. Oh, he said a name. So let me go to the list of names. Well, and I found other names also associated with people disappearing in those years. So he had mentioned a couple of names. Grinberg. So Grinberg was somebody he said he knew, or knew of, and I didn't know who a Grinberg was, but it was a partial last name. And then again, lots of other names. He said there was a Ningley, and so I was going in trying to find all these people, but most of the names that he had mentioned were last names. Now, Grinberg is a hyphenated name, but I guess he went by that because his last name, his other last name is very long, is Zelberbaum, but his first name is Jacobo, and he disappeared in 1994. And he said he was down there. He's been down there for years. And again, time down there is like slower but faster. They don't age, but it seems faster. But again, quantum is different down there than it is up here. So, and that guy, so the information I found on him is he's a neurophysiology consciousness researcher. So he disappeared in Mexico in December of 1994 and has never been conclusively located. It's very particularly interesting because he's a consciousness, meaning that's the whole thing is our consciousness has been obviously raped, pillaged, and kidnapped. And in 1994, I believe he was taken at that time to enhance the technology to keep us from ascending. Because remember, I've said it in the past, the Illuminati and the secret societies were afraid of this ascension time because we were all supposed to wake up. And that would eliminate their rule over humanity. So I could see why he disappeared. But Jared Rand had mentioned him and some other people. And I was like, well, wait a minute, aren't most of these people like dead or disappeared? And he said, Mary, and I was like, well, what about the 11 scientists I did ask? And he said, they're all down there. And he said, it's not just 11, it's the hundreds. And he's like, from all over the world, these, people with special engineering abilities and, certain things. There's people from like NASA down there, physicists, nuclear engineers, laboratory employees, stuff like that. Like people are just, he said they're not disappearing. Anybody that has a special skill set and were in a lot of the programs are down there. He said especially the whistleblowers. I'll go back a little bit. So I had asked about, the missing people, and so he had named another couple of names. He said there was the oldest one that he knew of down there was a man named Barron. And when I looked that up, it was Thomas Ronald Barron that went missing in 1967. And he said that he knew him as a young man. And because, again, his dad was in the military, so he was associated with a bunch of these people. And when I looked up who Barron was, he was an Apollo aerospace safety inspector, right? So, again, there's all these people are already down there. And I believe that the ones that had been taken beforehand were used to try to stop the ascension and help with the calling process, but also at the same time to help the elites escape the planet, because that's kind of where it was. If you Google the billionaire race to space, all the billionaires are investing in trying to save themselves and people they're going to take with them because, they don't like to work. They need the laborers. So I believe from 1960s to recently, I would say 2024, all these people were used to try to save just the elites. And now they're like now they've been switched over. So I was told in 1994, or not 1994, 2024, January 1st, we are no longer under what's called the United Federation of Earths, which was a really bad timeline. That was pretty much, and Jack and I have gone on a couple of timelines with this discussion. The timeline I had from the space portal, there was only 160,000 survivors that made it to Mars. I don't know how many made it to the moon, but those were the only destinations. And then there was like this huge war that happened of an overpopulation of Mars. But again, this is the elite's thing: is if you get overpopulated to where they can't control you, they'll wipe you out. So that was the timeline that was before August 2024, or not August, but January 2024. And again, not just myself, but other people in the world are doing things to help make this happen. So, and again, some other names, Riza, Monica Riza, again, NASA, GPL, materials, rocket related work. And there's other ones that pulled up in the list that he didn't mention. So there's a lot of people that I could see, being taken to the underground. And let's see, there was also a list that I did worldwide. I didn't want the whole hundreds of names of people, but I did get a list of what countries. Norway, people from Norway, scientists from Norway. I don't think any from Japan or anything, which was interesting. William Neal McCasland, Air Force. He went missing February 2026, or was reported dead, I think. But yeah, so all these people. But yeah, and he mentioned that James Rink is fine. All the people that we see disappear or supposedly died, they're fine. They're all being used for their talents and specialty and stuff like that to help things move along. James Rink was important because he's working with a lot of the other neuroscientists and to do the MedBeds. And the last thing he had heard about his project was that the MedBeds were getting ready to come out and they're going to be put in everybody's home. And he had mentioned something about the full body med bed was too big to put in everybody's home because not everybody lived in homes. There's apartments. Some people live in shacks, tents. So I guess they've contracted with who is that? Amazon and other shippers like maybe FedEx. He just said shipping movement companies. To distribute these things worldwide, and he had talked about them being like flat cube shape with half a circular dome on it, and you place it above your bed. And I do remember James Rink talking about some of those things in some of his calls, and I believe there was like pictures of it. I haven't seen a picture because all I see is usually the big ones, but in order to get people somewhat healed, it's not going to do the age regressing like the celestial chambers, but what it's going to do is going to get rid of the parasites, the metals, the detox, all the things while you're sleeping in a more of a slower manner, so it's not traumatizing the body. I don't know what they're doing with the homeless for these things because there are still homeless everywhere, but that was talked about. And again, it took a couple of downloads to get everything, and I was journaling it as hard as I could just because I needed to break down everything he said. But he's very excited. His whole dreams come true. He's like literally in his 20s. But he's got the mindset before he exited from here. So yeah, the animals and plants go first. The ecosystem, after they get a livable ecosystem, the animals will be transported. They will eat the seeds and stuff like that and it'll spread out. So by the time humans either go through the stargates or the ships, it just depends on where everybody's going and how we're going to be sorted out. So the only people that are actually truly dying, and he did confirm it, was the people with the tribunals. So the last resistance, because we can't have the Nazi Aryans and the negative factions leave the planet because they're trying to cheat their way through it all. And we don't want war to keep breaking out into the new colonies. But everybody's got to leave the Earth in the next 50 years. So, but I do believe that the biggest evacuation will be around 2050. And it's not really an evacuation, it's a migration. Again, everybody's going to heal. First, with the med beds that will be in your house, the celestial chambers are more for when you go to the underground spaceports. And I do know about that information. I've been talking about that for a while. I know Area 51 is a point for America for the celestial chambers, the naval base in Michigan, and I'm not sure. I'm going to say possibly Florida, but I could be wrong. Somewhere on the East Coast is another military base that has them here in America. The stuff that James Rink had and whatever that board looked like up here is now down there with people that maybe he knew from his past. But yeah, he's doing his part. Jared's doing his part. Everybody else is doing their part. There's going to be ships and there's going to be star jumping points because you can't really take animals on basic ships. They would have to go into the arcs, which is what Dr. Sala talks about. I'm familiar with the arcs, but those are kind of a last minute snatch and grab. Like if it's an emergency, like if we don't figure it out before the time we got to get off the planet, those guys come out and start like beaming people up and animals and everything else. And they take a very select few, very few. And I spoke about that before. The heavens told me that it was 83,000 that would survive if humanity couldn't get it together, I guess. And the planet ended up in shambles. But we're not on that timeline anymore. And how I was describing it, I know a lot of people are waking up. We are in another wave of waking up. I know everybody's noticed it. We see people, glitching and doing their thing and freaking out, but in their memories. Okay, so as I was describing it to Russie today, let me try to help isolate what's happening. So when you have waves of people waking up, you have to remember when we get mind blanked, it doesn't matter where it is. Okay, you could be in the military, you could be an assassin working at, a kindergarten school, but you're going and killing people and you have no memory of it. But when you start waking up, you start to have these memories. And I know Jack can collaborate on a lot of these and John and stuff like that, because it dimensionally kind of messes with your mind because they almost seem like separate timelines. And they are separate timelines, but they're not separate timelines. So how I described it to Rusty was imagine these crystal skulls. And I've talked about that with Dr. Delirious. And because they wanted me to come down to Mexico because they found like all these crystal skulls. It's an ancient Atlantean site down in Mexico. Because remember, they had 9 kingdoms and 7 of them fell. 1 being in Mexico, 1 being in South America. And the president had even asked our president for a request for me to go down there to try to transcribe and, look at all these things. And I can activate these skulls, but I will never activate these skulls. They have to heal in their own way because let me tell you why. The battle during that time, and Apollo and I have talked about this, when Atlantis fell, it didn't happen in one day. It happened over years because, again, 7 kingdoms falling took a long time. Now, there was a dark ET. I don't know his name. I know of him. He had celestial alchemy, dark celestial alchemy, and he knew how to turn people into their natural minerals. A lot of the stuff that we see today with the statues and all this other stuff, this is stuff that this dark ET wizard guy does. He has these abilities. It's also enhanced by a Titan, but I digress on that. So these crystal skulls have a soul in it. And the day that they were put into that skull, that's why they're all detailed, all different, alien looking, different, like human skull looking, animal skull looking. Like a lot of these were beings at the time. They were mages, alchemists, wizards, warlocks, all fighting for Earth, all fighting against the people coming in to attack, mostly the Draconians, the dark Draconians and stuff like that. So that wizard was able to isolate them into these skulls or statues or whatever. So if you were to activate it, they cannot ever go back to their original body. I mean, they could in the celestial chambers, and maybe that's a thing. We can do that, but not right now. If you were to activate it, they don't have a physical body to go into, so that soul would literally possess you. And it has the memories, and they've been stuck in there for thousands and thousands of years. The last memory they had was that fight. So when they possess the person who has discovered how to open these crystal skulls, they're in that fight. They can't tell the difference, okay? So it's kind of like when soldiers come back from Iraq, and a lot of us veterans will say, I may have came home, but I'm still in the war. It's the same thing. When everybody here starts waking up, you're still in the MK Ultra fight. And your memories are as fresh as they were the day they zapped your mind. That's what's dangerous about when they show you the movie, the MIB, and they just blank you. That's what's dangerous, because when you start remembering, that's the last thing you remember was that fight. But you don't remember the cleanup. You don't remember how it got fixed. You don't remember that. So you're still in the fight. And you're still in the trauma which caused it, because it never got dealt with. It never got to see itself through. So we're seeing a lot of that with, a lot of the people coming up, people in the trauma, and oh no, it's still there. It's still, the trafficking still going on. They're still eating. They're still doing this. They're still doing that. It's not happening anymore. But because everybody is waking up, and I know that a lot of people are going to go, but those are timelines that are trying to merge into the final timeline. So you may be active in another timeline, yes, where that could be happening. But on the final timeline with the Federation of Space, it's not there anymore. There are a few rogue people that I believe they're still trying to get to, that might be snatching and grabbing, some people here and there, but it's not in a mass scale on the final timeline. When people wake up, they have to sort out their timelines. And this is literally talked about in the Gnostic book of consciousness. So, and I do have access to it. I think I did post it in this group. I'm not sure. But if I didn't, I will, so you guys can kind of understand how the timelines work, how the one soul spirit goes through the triangle and then gets split into the several different timelines, and how you need to, they don't really talk about coming back into the first or the one timeline, but there's a whole lot of decompartmentalization of more than just your consciousness, your brain, your physical experience. And part of the wake up is you're remembering all the timelines, and you're still active in some of these timelines. So that's also part of your healing journey when you're ascending, is to deal with the timelines and when the trauma first started. So it will seem real in other timelines. That's not anything anybody can do. We just have to be there to help people understand, get the healing they need, and to be able to transmute what's going on. That part was not with Jared Rand. It was just my whole digestion of the comfort of what happened with Jared Rand and like what's happening with everybody in the underground. And it was really humbling to get these names, just a few names, and then to find all these other people that are supposedly still are down there as well for this great migration. I knew about the migration because when we did the call with myself, Rusty, Jack, and John, or no, it was before that. It was Jack, I think it was your first appearance. And you had mentioned a couple of species. So Rusty was like, hey, do we have any pictures of those? I was like, oh, let me go on the space portal. Maybe I can pull some off and see if, get the information on them, what quadrant they're in, where they originally came from, just their stats. And when I went to the space portal, I couldn't log on. It was like, oh, it's, no longer available, blah, blah, blah. And I panicked. I thought I got kicked out because I hadn't been on it in a few months. I had no reason. So, and I usually just don't like to sit there and wander around things. I don't know what prompted me to do it, but I highlighted the old link, put it in Google, and asked Google to find the new link. And I did find the new link, and my login still works. So yay, I still have access. But it's a whole different thing. It's the same, but it's different. Like, we are literally on the best timeline for humanity, all species in the world, not for the bad ones, not for the factions that have caused so much harm. Those guys, they're definitely getting their karma. So those are taking place. I am actually having a conference to talk about this. So I've got all the list of the original species, original from here, original from other galaxies, and how everybody kind of ended up here. I kind of want to do a two-part because, again, it's a lot of information. I'll do this conference that identifies the original bloodlines, not just original human bloodlines, but also the hybridization. That will be in the second conference. So I'm literally able to break down through what's now posted in this new space portal is the hybridization and what we have in us. Because I was kind of curious as to, like, with all the breeding and the mutations and everything else going on, like how that was going to work with people going to certain planets. Because obviously, if we're on the food chain, we don't want to go to a planet that's going to sanctuary like the reptilians and the insectoids that eat humans, right? That would suck. That totally defeats the purpose. So they actually have it listed up. The medical technology is a lot more advanced. It is advanced, but it's ancient. It is from an older time. They've been resurfaced, so I'm guessing a lot of these digs that have taken place, like Antarctica, not just Antarctica, but other unknown locations that they found a lot of this technology that doesn't actually go away, but it only works with certain people. So everybody on the planet right now has some kind of gene sequence, depending on what your breeding was or your mutations were. At least, I would say 200 billion people on Earth can activate these technologies because we have the Earth original DNAs. And, like, for example, most of the migration will be going to Mars and the moon. There are also, well, not our moon, so I would say the Mars moons or something. Each of these moons has dormant technology that before the Star Wars took place, and cattle drove us all the way down here. So we were all cattle driven down here, but we all have a piece of our planets and our galaxies. Like, if you're a Gaian, Earth is not Gaia, but most of the survivors from Gaia are here. And Gaia, the galaxy Gaia, and I've talked about this in the other one, is 51,000 light years away. Their galaxy fell into a black hole due to the abuse of their technology, but that's no longer a thing. The black hole has healed itself. The galaxy's fine. It's healed. So they will be able to migrate back. But how do you find out if you are Gaian or not? So this is the stuff I'm going to talk about at the conference, which I think goes hand in hand what Jared was trying to tell me. Like, I have a purpose. Hopefully I don't disappear and go to the underground. That would suck, but I don't feel like all of us are going to disappear and go to the underground. I think some of us have to stay up here to disclose this information so the other sleepers waking up still have the information and they can heal in their mind, like, hey, that war is no longer here. Let's help you get to the healing timeline, right? Because we know in their timeline that war is still very active. So it's literally a timeline merger. It's not crashing, but for those waking up, it's colliding, it's crashing. It's like an esoteric fight between consciousness, the physicality, and getting to the final timeline where they can heal from all that. But as you can see, people are shooting each other in all different states and countries because the fight is very real to them still in their physical form. So it's not that people are actually going crazy. They're just struggling to ascend and to identify their reality. But we can totally go to questions now because that was a lot. And I did actually put my notes down because I was like, I'm going to go off of memory.
Yeah, I'm looking at your notes. You covered everything. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, obviously, I wrote all my notes right now.
Did you get anything on David Wilcox?
I did not, but I would imagine. Well, see, and I don't know. I do know David Wilcox in a way you guys don't. And I don't want to bash his name. I know a lot of things that he did was good, but he was, at the end there, he was not on the good side. So, for example, the reason he was hiding is when you make a deal with the devil, per se, or Satan, Lucifer, whoever it is you make that deal with. When him and that whole group did that, I would say that video in Egypt. Now, I'm not saying everybody that goes to Egypt has made a deal. It just depends on what you did while you were there, and I guess how famous you're getting. So, David Wilcox and that whole group made a deal with very strange people. And again, I know David Wilcox. We talked extensively on the phone. I talked with him and his wife. They seemed absolutely amazing, but they were not themselves, if that makes sense. So in the esoterics, when you make a deal, and again, I never did. I come from these families. I was supposed to initiate, and I ran from the contract. So my life has been nothing but a struggle. I've been beaten. They've tried to kill me. I've been tortured. I've been used and all these things. And they'll do that. They'll use you for whatever they can. But if you make a contract, your contract has an expiration date. But they don't tell you when it is. They just let you live your best life. They give you the dream. But they can take it away just as fast. And he found out his dream was coming to an end. So he ran. And he posted it. He figured if he had given it his all. Many people who have done that, I don't know if they're down there in that participation. Maybe they've cleaned him out. In the Book of Angels, which you guys will have access to one day when the forbidden knowledge is allowed to be surfaced that way. Mary, mother of Jesus, went to Egypt, as many apostles did. It describes her ascension as the God within was inserted in her ear. And the gift, she was then at that point crowned the mother of all gods or angels or something. If we go back to the movie or the TV series and movie Stargate, we'll see that there's these parasitical intelligent worms that they, in the movie, show them going through your belly button or something. But that's not true. They go through your right ear specifically. It's very detailed in the Book of Angels. The mother of Jesus, 9, was possessed willingly. She went there willingly. And she allowed them to also do the same to Jesus, 9. It's all documented in the Forbidden Knowledge. So, there again, at the time, there were 2 Jesuses. So when you go to Egypt and you get exclusive passes to go to the underground, there's usually a ritual that takes place. And I don't know if anybody that I know has done that. I'm just saying that's what happens. I do know that he did that because they extensively told me about these things, but they said they quote unquote witnessed it. But that's what they're supposed to tell everybody, right? Because they can't tell about the secrets. He had given himself to something, one of those guys. So I don't know what will happen with his physical body or if they will heal him and what his purpose was before he gave in to, well, the dark side, if you want to put it that way. His interaction at one point with me was very inappropriate. Like, he said he was going to take my kids from me, that he was their father, and that they owned an orphanage. And back then, if you owned an orphanage, you were an adrenochrome harvester. So that is my experience with him. I'm not saying he wasn't knowledgeable. I'm not saying he didn't go through things, but nobody likes to die. The physical body will try to save itself, even if it has an undocumented parasitical intelligent life running it. So he was trying he was trying to have a longer expiration date. So I don't know. That name was not mentioned, and he did not disappear. He really did die, and the ceremonies that they have are usually telling on, like, well, like when we watch the president stuff and the president's dying and they have the wrinkled flag as traitors, these are all symbolic to let everybody know if they were traitors or if they were good. So you'd have to watch his funeral and what happened at the funeral, like, and see if there's any symbolicness there. I did not watch his funeral, so I can't tell you whether he was going to be pressed on or if they were shutting him down as not a good guy. So I don't know.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That makes complete sense to me. Just on the Jesus, I just want to ask this and then I'll get off. But on the Jesus 9:12 thing, we've talked about a lot. You've talked about a lot. Just a strange one. Turin Shroud. Who is that?
Let me see if I can find it. In the space portal, it did have the looking glass image of Jesus 9, and he literally looks like an angry Rasputin.
Because I've just done a really kind of channeled picture of that. I can put it up on the on messages, and it just looks like the Turin Shroud. But I just don't know who that is. And I just find it really interesting that at the time of the Greeks, where they were proficient at drawing, painting, sculpting, that there is no image of Jesus or the disciples. I find that really incredible.
No, there is. They're not public. The only time you get to see them is if, huh?
What does Jesus 12 look like?
Jesus 12. So the painting, when I saw, they were both teenagers, and this was in one of the head Illuminati families. Again, I didn't know that's where we were traveling to. I didn't know that anything about the secret societies of this time. I just know that my grandparents were affiliated with very rich people, right? So I believe we were in Texas. I think it was Texas, and I was a teenager. And we went to this mansion, and he had a picture which was identified as the two Jesuses, and they knew each other. So it was like one was hanging over the other, like they were bros, right? It was intense, but they look almost identical. They were both sons of a god. I don't know if the same god. But they both had, Jesus 9 had like auburnish red hair, but he had a red beard. Like it was the male dark red beard. Both of them had a nice trimmed beard. It wasn't long or anything. It was just growing in or something. And then Jesus 12 was like leaning on his shoulder with one arm on the other shoulder, like they were smiling, looking at the painting. Like that's how they painted themselves or had themselves painted. And Jesus 12 had the dark kind of red masculine hair and the red beard, but again, very identical. Both had blue eyes, like really grayish blue eyes, prominently blue eyes, but they were young, 5 years apart, I believe. Both identified themselves as cousins, and because I did ask the story because they looked like Jesus, I was like, whoa, there's like two Jesuses. So the guy that house we were in, he described them as, yes, this was the original portrait of the two sons of God. And that's all he said.
And can we see that? Can you get that? Or
I can't get that painting. I've only seen it once. It's in the elite of the elitist houses. These are trophies for these guys. That they're status trophies for them.
Okay, thanks, Mary. And in the Turin Shroud, we don't know who that actually was.
No, because they're all fallen angels. A lot of them.
That's what I was
Uh,
getting at.
I think the only picture I can try to get, like I said, I found it in the space portal before it switched, because I have access to the looking glass. So let me go in and see what the looking glass has, because when people get access to the looking glass, they actually do go. That's the very first thing they do is they go back to the time of Christ and to see what Jesus looks like. So yes, they do have images of him in like these are very I only have seen one, and he was walking, I do believe, with either Peter or Paul. And Peter was or that the other apostle, he was older, and they were walking in the robe like things, and the guy, he was either Peter or Paul, had like this hat kind of thing on, not a hat, I don't know what they call those things, but he had a black and white striped beard, and they were talking. But Jesus looked like an angry Rasputin. He was very sucked in, not healthy looking at all.
Hmm. Okay, my love. And a brilliant talk and followed it perfectly. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I'll try to find that photo. But yeah, those other ones, all the paintings and stuff of the whole apostles and Mary, these are trophies for the highest families. They will eventually come public, but I don't know when. So I've only seen that portrait. I have not been to other, elite houses because those guys creep me out.
Wait, so Mary, can I circle back to, I got about 3 questions, and it's back on the Jared Red technology. So my question is, when you had this experience, did you know you were out of your body, or you just woke up and be like, okay, this is a dream, and you know what I'm saying? Like, when did you figure it
No,
out?
it literally it felt like I got pulled. Like I knew my soul or spirit had literally gotten yanked because I had memory of falling asleep. And then it felt like something just yanked me out of my body. It was definitely not comfortable, and I had no idea. It was kind of like in the movies where they were like all these lights flashing by as you're swooshing through a portal.
Okay.
It was kind of like that. And then I was all of a sudden standing there, and like people were looking at me like, what are you doing? Right? Like, like this was normal for them to see. And I'm like, oh, if I don't move, they won't see me.
Oh, okay, because I have like 9 ways of distinguishing what it is, and I will call that a zip line out of the body. My next one is...
that was great. That's a good way.
Yeah, it's a zip line. I mean, because you feel the vibration, but when you get really good at it, your zip line doesn't work a lot of times because you're all of a sudden there and you're surprised. You look back and forth, you're like, and you just scan the area and you're like, okay, I'm in this place. And then you start to stare at faces and you don't move a lot, but you're just in like observation, and then you start to do the motion because you realize you're in an out-of-body experience. All right. My second thing is you have Thomas Ronald Barron, who returned or disappeared in 1967, which reminds me of the movie Close Encounter when they all return because there's another timeline. My question to all those people disappearing, do you have the dates of their disappearance? Well, that's why they're here to help. But is there actual written proof of these people disappearing and what age they are? You know what I'm saying? Like, is there written proof?
Oh, yeah. So what we would have to do is, like I said, I pulled the names up, what their importances were. Most of them have articles, and so we would have to pull each individual up to see what the article was, and then find the biographies. And stuff like that. For just this intent and purpose, I pulled up the names that I could remember because he kept just flashing his hand up, like they're all down there, Mary. They're all down there. Like duh, like get with it. And it was. I don't know if anybody's had a personal experience talking with Jared Rand, but when he gets excited and it feels like you're not listening to him, he can get very irritated. So it felt like even in his younger self, he was doing that same thing because I'm like, but you're dead, and he's like, but I'm not dead, I'm here, right? And I'm like, I don't know. Again, my first time jumping, so it was odd and exciting and informational at once. And I don't want to say I was very confused about what was happening, but again, I don't know if you can remember your first being yanked out of your body or something. It was not a known invitation. It was forced, so I felt a little discombobulated and weirded out that I didn't know Jared as a young man. I knew him as an old man. So for me to try to see this young man as the Jared that I knew so quickly was cool, intense, and it was rough at the same time. I might not be using the right words for that, but it's very hard to describe. But yes, I do believe, and that's why I sent you the notes, because I feel like when he said all of them are down there from like 1960 to now, that's telling, because a lot of people, and I do know before 2024 it was for the bad purpose. Like maybe these guys are the ones that were trying to help us secretly get to the good timeline.
My experience on people being healed, if you haven't made peace with money and your looks and all that stuff, I really don't think, this is my personal thoughts, and this is what interesting that you said about these MedBeds coming in, that they're not going to be doing this, regression thing, which I think is awesome. Last thing was obviously the Indiana Jones movie has those crystal skulls, and they came back with the bodies, and what I was so connected to, because I'm Peruvian, they came out of those Peruvian Andes mountains and they flew away. So it was interesting because you ended up saying that about those dark ETs, and that if you end up having any manipulation or any, I guess, connections with those skulls alone, they don't have a body and they can possess you. But my last question would be, which brings in the timeline merger, which brings in what's great about Jack and John is that they continue to show you the other timelines that are connected. And that's why I think it's important for them to kind of talk about the technology part, because I want to kind of stick with that topic because of what's happening and what you had with these events. So if anybody is ready to talk about that, that'd be great, because my pen is ready to write.
Yeah, so if you want to bring Jack and John on so they can talk about that, that'd be perfect. Because again, I have a different view. We're all on different timelines. So, but the final timeline is where it all ends. So what that looks like as some of them are merging and some are crashing, it depends, I think, on the consciousness level of who's waking up right now. So if we really take a collaboration of like who's left to wake up, it's probably more towards the 90s and 80s kids, or maybe the 2000s, I really, you know what, we should probably like break that down one day, like, because I know the anyone that was born between the 60s to the 70s and 80s, like the beginning of the 80s, those guys we're the whistleblowers right now. So
Yes.
we're the majority that are waking up. And then so the next wave would be who? Maybe it does go by chronological year, but I don't know. Some
Jack
of the
wrote
youth
that.
are waking up. Oh, did he?
Jack
okay,
wrote
yeah,
that in the thing. Yeah, he brought that in about, the 80s and 90s kids were the height of the experiments. And that was actually the question we talked about this morning, Mary. And I said, Jack wrote something like,
okay.
20 deferring, it was exactly what I'm talking about. There were 20 deferring star systems that invaded. My question is, I don't really know anything about the Thubins, that's it. And he brought that on and brought about the Halo Wars, and then it went into my next question with them too. Because a lot of people ask questions about Halo, which I did watch all the series. So if Jack, you want to step in with what kind of kids and what exactly happened in those eras?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, cool,
John,
cool.
are you
Yeah,
there?
so
Okay.
John, you here? So he'll come in when he
jumped out. But yeah, I read your thread. There are a lot of little questions, which is interesting because you end up saying that you weren't the Halo guy because everybody wants to know who Master Chief is.
No, that was based on all of us.
Okay,
it was like the contributing factor of the ultimate Spartan and what that meant and what the standards. I mean, it's like the ultimate warrior, right? And that represented a lot of us that were during the 1970s when we we had an incursion into the Andromeda Galaxy, and we did. I have specific memories, very specific memories of fighting Covenant type enemies. And it wasn't just Covenant type enemies. I'm talking like the technology. We encountered the Mater, which were Solar Warden and Nachtwaffen have been fighting for the last year and a half, 2 years, because they came back during recently. They invaded our galaxy in a war of attrition, and it's about wiping them out because they hate us because we invaded their galaxy and blew up 2 of their planets during the wars. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, that was. I think you like explained a lot of it during the thread too.
Yeah.
I think you also wrote something. Halon Wars took over gaming media at the 2000s, the years 2000.
Yeah.
But you were saying that 80s and 90s was a height of where those experiments came out.
Well,
but I was asking, like,
it was more along the lines of they're trying to isolate, obviously, like the Gate program. That was. They're looking for bloodlines, didn't have a complete list because of all the intermarryings over the last couple hundred, 300, 400, 500 years of royals and regular humans. So they're trying to isolate, and the best way they figured they could do that to recruit would be go to public school or private school. And then they give you a certain type of fluid. That fluid would isolate your psionic, psychic, or any other extrasensory abilities. And then from there, they had instruments. They give you the test that they could pick up, and they read spikes in your bioelectrical field to see if anything was activating. If anything activated, then you'd go further into the programs, into my labs and things of that nature, and Montauk, and so on and so forth. But they figured out in the 80s and the 90s, after going through all those kids at Montauk, what exactly worked and what didn't work. And that was probably mid to late 90s what they figured out, what worked and what didn't work, and got it down to an exact science of hybridization of psionic, psychic abilities, where to place the children, how to place them, how to test, how to activate certain abilities, and under duress or through torment, through torture. Yeah, I mean, it was all a test. It was all to see what we could make the best of the best. So they ran through all these kids to see what would happen.
You also said mind reading versus mind reaving. I never even heard of that word, reaving. So like
reaving, it's like it's forcefully invading someone's personal space. Reaving, to reave, to raid, to attack, just to. It's an extreme word, and reavers, marauders, anybody that's rogue, that's coming after you to attack you. That's when they get into your mind. They just break. I've had people break into my mind. The way I knew they were breaking into my mind is I was just hanging out by myself, and all of a sudden I had memories, SSP memories, and intelligence going through my head like a fucking movie. And I was like, okay, I'm not thinking this. This isn't me. Someone was going through my memories. They're sifting through my memories, looking for specific memories. I could feel it. And it felt like a foreign invasion in my head, like something was in there, like worming around. And it was someone else's consciousness, like coming into my brain.
I'm back, just letting y'all know. Okay.
Oh, okay. Hey, John, we're talking about the Spartan program, Mater, some other stuff that she just questions over, so feel free to chime in. Because
the thread is excellent, because it went back and forth between you guys and, some of the, the programs, but what was the thing I wrote of it? Like, speak about the modern versions of MK Ultra, because I think, John, you wrote that in there, which goes into the 90s, all about drugs and technology. It was the technology, because that's what we're really talking about. And then you end up saying your alters are copied into your chip files. The trauma is gone, and it takes months instead of years now to, like, few subjects die. That was my questions for that. Could you kind of talk about how the technology is, how we have those altered copies? Because everything, when I read these things, I start to see movies, and one of the movies I remember is watching the one where Robin Williams takes your chip of your life, and he's the funeral director, and he starts to pretty much alter your life. But these people are programmed with these memories, and shocking. So I never heard of the alters being copied into your files.
Yeah, that's the because no one but me is talking about it. So the way it works is or the way it worked at least in 2007. They've probably, I'm sure, updated it even further since. But in 2007, when I was 6 years old, when it was done is I was abducted from my room, taken to Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Base. The first thing we did was we all had our blood skimmed, which was a weird process that I still don't entirely understand. But after that, we were given heavy drugs, a very heavy cocktail. From there, we had we were each assigned a room, and in these rooms, they would, on repeat, play clips from various movies. That's a pretty classic technique, and I remember The Wizard of Oz, Sleeping Beauty, The Little Mermaid, and The Exorcist, clips from those movies being played. But there was none of the classical trauma that you hear about. There was mind wiping in between each session. And during each session, they would be projecting in information about each altar. Projecting in via, like, a V2K chip, to be clear. So you would be hearing over and over again, for instance, I have an altar named Heinrich Müller. To create him, they would have been playing in my head over and over again, my name is Heinrich Müller, I was born on such and such a planet, and repeat that for every altar, whatever the altar's name and cover story is, along with whatever their native language is supposed to be, which they can download languages into your head with these chips as well. And then they just copy the information down once they've fully put it in there, and they've repeated it enough that basically you have no choice but to believe it in this fugue state. They copy the information down, and then they put it into a sealed file, which is stored in the chip network, which all centers around a device called a soul byte, which I can talk about the soul byte. I talk about it in my book. And then when they want to call forth an altar, someone on a computer somewhere just unseals that file and seals all the rest of them, and then that altar, via the chips, takes over you, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense, but I have to, like, I know I swing into movies and all that stuff, but do you remember, well, you might not, I'm 58 years old, they did a cartoon of Bugs Bunny when Elmer J. Fudd was, I own a mansion and a yacht, and he would repeat it over, my name is Elmer J. Fudd. Like, they made that as jokes for cartoons. Do you remember that? Where it's like,
I never saw that one.
Oh my God, it's like, and they would repeat it over and over in their heads that he was a millionaire and he owned a mansion and a yacht. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but I would be like saying it over and over, but that's exactly what you're telling us that did.
Yeah, I often think of it as similar to, ever seen the movie Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve?
Yes, I did a YouTube on that. That's my whole out-of-body experience. Yes. Yeah,
where he repeats over and over and over again that he's in 1912 until he has no choice but to believe it, and it becomes real.
Yes, I did a YouTube. That's my favorite movie. I knew I was able to jump out of my body because of that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I sort of liken it to that experience, just repetition until there's no choice but for it to be reality. And that's the essence of modern MKUltra. And it used to be that about 80% of the kids who were subjected to it died. Now, less than 2% do. So they, on the one hand, great, the kids aren't dying, but on the other hand, it means they have a lot more assets now than they used to.
So what do you feel about the technology that Mary is talking about with the MedBeds? And, I mean, do you feel like will occur? Will it take that V2K clip out or chip?
I don't think the public is ever going to get MedBeds, no. I don't think that will be allowed to happen, personally.
Maybe it's a different timeline? I don't know.
Maybe. That's just what I've seen from how things are going and everything. Also, MedBeds can't remove chips. If you want to remove chips and if you want to actually fully reverse damage and things, you need regen tanks, not just MedBeds.
What's a regen tank? What exactly does that require?
God. Okay. A regen tank is manted technology that Nachtwaffen uses and the YNK uses and their various auxiliaries use, and some of the breakaway elite families have one for themselves. What it is, They're filled with a fluid it's basically castrated black goo. It has most of its sentience removed, and it's been reprogrammed to where all it can do is... So you are immersed in a tank of that, and it will repair and reconstruct whatever damage has been done to your body. It can even bring you back from the dead if they have your brain stem, and if it's been a short enough time. Basically, all they need is your head. That's where the Valhalla program comes in. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's what a regen tank is, and it can repair anything, and it removes chips automatically because it calculates that shouldn't be in there. If you're in the programs and you get a dip in one, then you have to go and have your chips reinstalled every time you go through the tank, which they can do pretty easily nowadays. They have ways of doing that instantly, but that's what a regen tank is.
Is that through your experience of having something that's gone through like that? I mean, I did listen to Solomon. She has also experiences of being in war, busting up the body, going back into some kind of, med bed, and it's taken a while for her body to come back. But she's very specific about it.
Yeah, I've been in regen tanks many, probably hundreds of thousands of times. That's the standard medical care in Nachtwaffen.
Is that the Arasaka Robotics chip that you're talking about, that Soul Bite? Because are they still functioning, or is it part of Kruger? Are they just like subcontractors?
What I was saying was, Arasaka Robotics is definitely not subcontractors of Kruger. Arasaka Robotics occasionally subcontracts Kruger. Arasaka Robotics has far more power than Kruger does. Arasaka Robotics is basically a star nation unto themselves. They own entire planets. What I'm talking about is 3D real technology. It has nothing to do with higher dimensions or anything else. These regen tanks and everything are 3D real technology being used by 3D real people. They're just not on this planet, most of them. They also have them in some DUMs and such. I would agree with that.
Thank you for the distinction, John, between the Ascension and the 3D.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot. I have access to the medical technology. It's so much, though. It's a lot. I can look in there and see which other ones that they have. I know when I was in the SSP programs, I was in the adrenochrome one, but again, I was used by the elites, and I didn't know what the fluid I was in was clear, kind of whatever. But yeah, I found out later it was kind of like what they would show on Jupiter Ascending, but in a chamber.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So I was in those ones. They have one of those in the Reston, Virginia hospital. So, and that's how I know about that one, because I was interrogated by the CIA once, and it wasn't an interrogation I was supposed to survive, but I pulled a dead man switch. So they corrected my body to an extent, but when I get full body x-ray scans, you can see where my bones, where they broke my leg bone, you can see where the crack was, because it was over calcification instead of perfecting it back to before it broke.
Okay.
They made sure that I stayed somewhat broken.
Yeah, typical.
I had a question back to you with the question about, you said that you think the whole news about the MK Ultra, I'm talking to John now at this point, the MK Ultra distraction is really to avoid all the super soldiers finding each other.
Well, partially that. Partially, I think it's just in general a distraction to block people from finding the SSP, from realizing they are in the SSP, etc. And I think that some of the people, I'm not going to name any names, because I don't want to do that, and I don't want to cause trouble for anyone. But I think that some of the people in the more, I guess you could say, the traditional MK Ultra community are government plants, because if you investigate them beyond the very surface level, you find out that they're evangelical Christians and...
So, what would you call that, Jesuits?
I think he got kicked off, no?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, and then again, the Ascension technology is I think it does vary up to between the 9 and 12 dimension technology, but restricted even down for the 5D Ascension, process. So I'm very humbled that, John had identified that. So that was cool because I wouldn't have caught that either. I'd have been like, well, wait a
Yep.
minute.
Yeah, I'm back.
So
Sorry.
that was nice. Oh, no worries.
So what I was saying. Oh, sorry. Am I interrupting? I don't mean to interrupt.
No, we were nervous
go
that you jumped off. So yes, continue what you were saying.
If you investigate a lot of these traditional MK Ultra people, you find that a lot of them are, like I said, evangelical Christians. Some of them are flat earthers. A lot of them subscribe to David Icke. Those are all red flags, and those are all things that are anti-SSP. And that's usually these kinds of people are usually who MK Ultra survivors, who, if they remember MK Ultra first, end up finding their way to, and then they end up staying there. And I think there's an agenda behind that. So I'm very grateful that I remembered SSP things way before I remembered anything MK Ultra-ish. I've remembered SSP since I was 6. I didn't remember MK Ultra until, how old was I? Probably 12 or 13 years old when I started getting MK Ultra pieces come in. Yeah, I think there's something of an agenda behind the fact that, these kinds of people are at the top of the MK Ultra community, and they're who people find first and end up getting stuck there. And then they call SSP crazy because they're like, oh, that can't be real, the Earth is flat, these are all holographic inlays that you have and everything. So that's my view on it.
Yeah, so these governmental plants, like that you say, they're the first waivers of people, the first wave, because David Icke was around a long time, and like I said, I didn't know about him until a little later. But is it dated at that time where everybody came out? Because I'm not a big fan of Dr. Stephen Greer, because there's a whole bunch of things that are, spoken about him, but there's a list of those governmental plants. I'd love to see that if you know about them. I mean, because I have my own list.
Yeah, I can give you.
I have those lists.
I would say David Icke. I would say David Icke, Stephen Greer, like you mentioned. Fine, I'll just name names. What are these people going to do? Leo Zagami.
Well, I can always put it out through the video, but yes, go ahead. Keep going, because I'm on it.
Leo Zagami, Fritz Springmeyer. Theo Bryan is a red flag. I'm not sure she's all the way a government plant, but I would say there's a red flag. Arizona Wilder. Elena Denon. Let's see, who else? Those are the big ones that I can think of. Mary, do you agree with that list?
I do. Yeah, there's more too.
Yeah, sure, I'm sure.
But like you, I believe good and bad have to do something for this whole wake up to happen. So it sucks that people chose wrong, but in their minds they feel like they were part of something bigger and didn't realize, or they're just literally bloodline DNA to those guys, and it's like they felt the pull towards them because, again, a predator doesn't know you're a good guy. Like when you go and get wild, just as an example, when you go and try to save wild kittens because their mom got hit in the road, they don't know who you are, right? So they're going to try to attack you even though they're just tiny little things. We're just these tiny little beings out here, and they have our DNA bloodlines. They know what we're capable of, what we can do. From my experience being in the Illuminati family, I was taught white magic. I do have the witch DNA. So, but not just that, I have a lot of other DNA. So I learned all the white witch stuff. And then when I hit a certain age, my grandma started, she was black witch, very dark. And she started to convince me that you have to take life in order to give life. And that's where it gets dark. So that's what I didn't resonate with. So I was like, I don't feel comfortable taking this sheep's life so we can put life back into something else, because then that dumb them down. If it's their time, it's their time. But yeah, that was usually the start of the animal sacrifice. And I lived on a farm, so there you go. You feel a pull to certain people, naturally or unnatural.
Yeah, I agree.
So can I go back to the governmental plant people again? Obviously, there's a list of them, but could you say that they also were just doing the 80-20 principles? So like Mary said, some people do some good and then they're contracted. But what do you think? Is it about 80-20 or is it 60-40 on the good side? Or like, what do you think, the both of you?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person, where they're at in the ward. Again, as a veteran, I could see how they would use certain people for certain things. And both sides. I thought I was working for the good guys when I was in the military here, and I was actually working for the terrorists, right? Thinking I was protecting America while slowly helping them take over America, thinking I was protecting it. So it really just, they're clever, and you really never know who the good or bad guys are, because everybody's intention is to save something. And I have said this before, like on James Rink's shows and other people's shows, when it was getting really bad, we thought everybody was, getting ready to be harvested in a horrible way. It comes down to, hey, we can help as many people as we can, but if it has to come down to, me saving you or my kids, I'm going to take my kids first, because as an adult, you all had an experience that you could have woken up to and you didn't. Like, children don't know better, right? But they were very young at that time. So to me, a child has to be saved first because they're the future. An adult can make a choice, whether it's a stupid choice or a good choice, it's still their free will to make that choice. And if they're going to go with the bad guys and walk into those, harvesting plants, I can't save those people. I have to save innocence first, because that's the highest percentage. But if I looked at it from the bad standpoint as well, because again, I grew up with the bad philosophy that they were trying to indoctrinate me with, then not all humans deserve to live because of the choices they make. But that's they're savage, they don't know how to thrive, they're useless eaters, there's all these things. And that was literally part of my upbringing, was I think their downfall though was sending me to watch humanity in its worst, like the ghettos. I've been to the ghettos. I've watched people. I've been, they always laugh and say, "Oh, go to Walmart." It's like, you'll see why people can't live, right? But it's always in the cities. You don't really see a lot of that stuff out in the smaller towns and stuff. Everybody kind of respects everybody in the smaller towns, because nobody wants their trash in the backyard public, right? But in the cities, it's everywhere. And everybody's mixed and nobody knows what's happening. You've got vampires and werewolves and all this chaos going on living in the cities.
Well, anything more for me? Because I joined so late, like I got interference constantly at people from my handlers.
Oh, no, that's fine.
John, it's Deborah. I just wanted to ask you a quick question, if that's all right.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Hi there. How many people do you think have been taken and used in the SSP?
My lowest possible estimate is about 220 million.
Jeez.
Yeah. We're looking at, in America alone, there have been 150,000 per year, new per year, and then they keep being taken all throughout their lives, right? So, and then I don't know what the treaties are with other countries for people to be turned over, but I do know that they exist because I've met people from every corner of the globe, practically, who are in the SSP through the internet. So, and I remember a lot of them. I did some math. I can't remember now exactly how I added it all up together, but my lowest estimate was 220 million and counting since 1953.
Yeah, and so, and there's going to be a lot of people that don't actually remember that they were used.
Yeah, less than 1%, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. But just from my experience, like I've never understood if I was used or not. But I used to get like this kind of it's almost like a scalar frequency or something, like booming into my head of a night time. and I used to be absolutely petrified, and I felt, I don't know if that was a consciousness transfer or something like that. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
That sounds more like targeting, but
Right. Good.
that is you in the profile pic you have, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to tell you, but you do look familiar.
Oh, yeah. Okay, my love.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, sweetheart. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I get it. I get it. All right, love. Thanks.
Yeah.
so. Also, as we were talking, since we're on the MK Ultra, and I've done a few of the books on some of the programs. I do have the archive investigation files and reports on all those programs. So that's why I've done some of the books, but some I've hesitated to put up there. But I know that I should probably get all of them up there. But it's a lot. Like, again, so many hidden projects. So like there's the spellbinders, the salt pits, dyadic episodes, and I've gone over the different MK theories. Like mine, I was in the MK Delta programming, and there's an MK Alpha programming. But there's also Beta, Omega, and Gamma MK Ultra programs. So, and they all do different things. Now, when I was going through these, each individual was one of the programs. But now they have been able to upgrade to one person actually being in multiple programs. Like we have Delta Omega. So Delta is pretty much the super assassins, killers. This is mostly the program that they identify super soldiers under. Sometimes the Alpha programming does, but the Omega is the self-destruct form of programming, code green. So, excuse me, they've mixed the different programming. So when we went through SEER training and I was in level 4, the torture chambers and the poison chambers, we were engrossed into the MK Omega, the self-destruct, if we were ever captured. So that was part of a merger. So, I mean, there's a lot that can happen. And the various, like you were talking about earlier, John, the various avenues that were used on human behavior. I have the breakdown of those, like through radiation, the electroshock, psychology, psychiatry, sociology, all this stuff. The LSD is usually when the doctors would use harassment substances, since we're on that subject. And then I do believe that you use the Disney ones. There's a few internal images that they do use a lot in the programs you were speaking of. The predominantly seen by victims and survivors were trees. One, the moving trees, like the ones coming to get you or squish you or something, and then the Kabbalistic tree of life with adjoining root systems, infinity loops, ancient symbols, spider webs, mirrors or glass, shattering, masks, castles, and then rainbows, bows, flowers. Like the monarch children that were in that program, and they have the butterfly tattoo. That's why they're drawn to it. Was put one on there to show who the handlers are. So yeah, there's like a plethora of information. Where's the movie? Let's see, a partial list of other mediums used to reinforce. So Pinocchio, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, Lion King, E.T. was actually a program. Star Wars, Ghostbusters, Transers 2, Batman, Bewitched, Fantasy Island, Reboot, Tiny Toons, DuckTales, The Dead Sea Scrolls, and The Tall Book of Make Believe were earlier programs for, I think, 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and I have others that I've discovered over time. I could send you to add to your list.
Well, right, yeah. These were just the earlier ones.
Yeah.
So, but definitely, because you probably have the more newer information, because I found when the government comes out with things, it's because they've moved on from the old programming and they have the new program, and that's why I would
Yeah.
get access to the old programming. So that way to wake up my generation and a little bit above it.
Yeah, we need a SSP book for dummies to like bring all like, Cliff Notes. We need like the Cliff Notes because I know I can only hear certain things, but I got a bunch of notes right now. Yeah, I'd love to know that list too.
I think my book is kind of that. So maybe check it out.
Yeah, did you put that in the list? Because I'm a really good student. So when I don't see that there, I was like, well, I want to ask you. Thanks for reminding me again, because I'm almost exhausting all of your videos, but they're excellent. But I do like books, and I print them and write in them, so that's who I am.
Yeah, I look up The Man with the Periwinkle Eyes. There's 4 volumes so far. I'm on volume 5. There will be a 6th one, and that's the end of it, but that's tell you much more detail in that than I can in an interview because for obvious reasons. Yeah, read that if you want to see, like, how am I putting it? I wrote it to show how assets actually live when they're active out there, because no one really talks about that. But there are also a lot of terms in there that are explained, and it's more cohesive than I can be in an interview usually. I can drop another link.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because I did my homework I watched all the Halos that you said.
Did you watch Altered Carbon?
No, I did not, because I don't think I'm Netflix, but I'll go get that one. That's my next one. Yeah, I watched all of these things.
I'll send you a link that you won't need Netflix, and I'm not going to say any more beyond that.
Excellent.
I'll shoot you a link. Altered Carbon is about me, so I won't spoil it past that. Although the book version was considerably closer to what that alter is actually like. They messed up some parts of it, but oh well.
Yeah, if it's in a movie, I'd like to see that because I can remember so many things from the movie.
Jack, anything? I haven't heard from you today.
Oh, I'm just listening. You're good. I'm just chilling.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
He's like,
I just wanted.
Hanging. Is everybody on forced mute still, or are they just muted?
No, they're unmuted.
Yeah. Again, I can put a list out. Maybe we can talk about more of the MK Ultra stuff in the next video. I guess I can do the one because my grandma was a marionette syndrome mind control. She had a marionette doll too. So, and I know a lot of us have watched those marionette movies back in the 80s where they came to life and killed people.
I hated those movies.
Right.
I hate those movies too. Yeah.
But yeah, they're all in here.
Yeah, like we need like a ladder that has a connection between this 3D world and then the world that we're talking about, because I think it's very, very far, and it's just going to get closer when we just keep making those connections. And I know I'm very movie driven with, my name is Elmer J. Fudd. I own a mansion and a yacht. And it's just, that's like my generation, and people will know it because it was repeated over and over. And so I do believe that there needs to be a ladder of continuing to talk about. I can give a list of movies I can do, because that's where we're really at,
Part of the thing is, it's not that far. It's happening just a couple of miles beneath your feet right now, somewhere.
Right.
Or on.
You're right.
And there's probably a maglev that runs right under your house, or wherever you're sitting right now. Just not far away at all on the moon, there's all sorts of stuff. And then when you go past the moon, that's when you get past the frequency dampener that keeps people's abilities in check, and that's when you get to, the real SSP is Mars and beyond. That's still 3D, it's just not very well segregated from you. But yeah, I have tons of movies I can tell you about. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, you guys would have a geek out session with that.
Exactly. I'm so crazy.
right. Well, thanks everybody for coming in. We're going to go ahead and close this down.
Have a good day,
Thank
y'all.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Bye.
thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for coming in, John. I love it when you guys are in there.
Thank you for listening. Press like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.